Hi and welcome to the eCave. In this episode I'll be continuing my adventure on the IBM 5150 PC. I'll be expanding it and testing out an original IBM hard drive. So if you're interested in that, why not join me? Thanks for staying. In this episode, I'll be looking to expand the IBM 5150 PC, which I've been restoring. One of the things that limits the 5150 from being expanded is the number of slots it has. It's limited to 5 slots. And also the power supply, which is only 63 watts. That power supply can barely run the 2 diskette drives, let alone a hard drive. So when IBM finally announced a new version of the IBM PC called the 5160 or IBM PC XT, they upgraded the power supply in that machine to 130 watts so they could sell it with a hard drive. Now, for the existing customer base, they decided to create an expansion unit. The expansion unit has 8 additional more slots and has the XT power supply, i.e. a 130 watt power supply. They released actually 3 models of the expansion unit, one specifically for the IBM 5150, and 2 for the 5160. Now essentially they're all the same base unit, but the configuration varied depending on which unit or which PC was being expanded. And as luck would have it, I do have an expansion unit, 5161 it's called. Now many of these units you pick up come with the receiver card inside, but you don't get the expander card or the cable which needs to go into the main unit. It's being used to expand. So I've had to scrounge about and I managed to score an expansion card on eBay not long ago, which didn't cost me a huge amount of money. So I'm looking forward to put that into the IBM PC 5150 and get that going. On top of that, I needed a cable. Thankfully, the cable is still being made today, and you can order it on Mouser or DigiKey. So I've got one of those as well. So I'll tell you a bit more about the models as I look inside this one and see if we can determine which model this one would have been originally intended to be. So let's get cracking and open it up and see what's inside. Of course, we have to look at the power supply for reefer capacitors, check the motherboard for shorts, and then hopefully clean it up, get it all hooked up and working. But more about that as we get going. So here we have the 5161 expansion unit. It doesn't look too bad. It appears it suffered some trauma at some time. I can see the cover here bulging out at the top. It's got a rusty spot here. So it's received some damage on the top. If you look at the back, we have the receiver card There's some other card inside there. It has there's the serial number, 49,303. And this expansion unit is made in the USA, Armonk. So it's probably one of the ones that was made for the US market. Now I can see there's a bend here, and that's caused the metal here to fold a bit in on the unit, which might mean it's harder to bring or get the cover off. It's of course a bit dirty. Now these units, as I said, came in 3 different versions. Model 1, which was meant for the 5150 PC. It came with a hard drive and the hard card inside. They also had the extender card and the receiver card and the cable, plus a BIOS kit to upgrade the 5150 BIOS, because the original 5150 BIOS wouldn't support a hard drive. Then they had a Model 2, which was same chassis, but it had a hard drive but no hard disk controller. Because the idea was that you would take the hard disk controller out of an IBM PC XT and move it to this unit plus the hard drive. That way you would get 2 hard drives and have 20 megabytes, because these hard drives were only 10 megabytes in size. Now, can we get this off? Yep, it did come off. That's good. Seems to be caught on something here. All right. Is there anything here inside? No. I'll put that aside. We'll have a look in here. All right, we have a hard disk controller and a hard drive. So this one would have been made for the IBM PC 5150. We have the receiver card here, which is this one, and this, I think, is a parallel port. But let's take the cards out, and obviously we need to take out the power supply to check for reefers. So let me get another socket to take these cards out. First comes, the parallel card, I believe. Yes, I'm pretty sure this is no, it's an asynchronous card. It's a serial card. It's an original IBM serial card, which is gives access to the world outside. Let's put that away here. Then we have the receiver card, which is in the first slot. Here's the receiver card. I can see that it's not too bad, i.e. with dust and dirt on it. And next we need to disconnect the controller card. So I think this is a fairly stock standard IBM MFM hard disk controller card. And once again, isn't too dusty, but we'll put that aside. Next, we need to get the hard drive out. So it's supposed to be here. It's here on the hard drive. It's early received a bit of a jolt. We'll have to do something underneath. Yes, there's a screw underneath here. Hold it in place. It needs to go. So I will take that out. Hopefully, we can get it dried out. Once we've done that, it's clear it suffered some damage here, so it's pretty hard getting it out. You can see how it's bent. It makes me wonder if this hard drive is actually going to work. Anyway, it has to come out. There we are. Mini scribe. There's no model number on it. Doesn't look dirty or anything, but you can see it's been bent. It's somehow been exposed to some shock. Well, hopefully it's just the brackets here that need to be fixed. So I'll put that aside. Next, we'll have to take out the power supply. Do that here at the back. 4 screws. Then unplug from the board inside. This should come out as well. Okay, put that here. The cables come out. And let me show you what's inside. As you can see, that's the motherboard on the expansion unit. 8 slots. 6 of them are full function slots, but 2 of them are what they call lesser slots for like asynchronous or parallel cards. Now, hopefully I can get this out as well. Now today we talk about system boards or motherboards. But back then IBM didn't call these motherboards. They were called system planers. Well, after a bit of wriggling, I finally got the board out. And here it is in all its glory. As you can see, it says here I/O planar, which used to be the name IBM called these boards. System planar, I/O planar, or whatever. And you can see the 8 slots. We have the capacitors, and there's a clock chip. Oddly, this board is not synced to the clock in the main unit. It has its own independent clock generator, and therefore they've decided to make sure that the graphics card and the memory expansions are all in the main unit. And that is why the expander card has a jumper setting on it. And this jumper setting, which this jumper here, tells the expander card how much memory is in the main unit, i.e. the 5150, and that drives some logic on the card to insert a wait state in the memory space above the main memory. So while it's accessing the expansion unit, it uses one wait state, extra wait state, and this causes everything, of course, to be a bit slower. I guess this was done due to the fact that they are transmitting data across a 1 meter long cable, which is between those two units. And in order to increase the reliability, they lowered the speed. Now, you can have a graphics card in the expansion unit, but that can only be if it's the second graphics card in the system. So the primary one always has to be in the base unit. So memory and memory expansion and primary graphics card always in the base unit. Aside from that, you can have hard drives and I/O cards in the expansion unit. Well, it's time to take the power supply to the workbench and find out if it has any reefers. And I also have to clean this up as well and do some unbending, so to speak. As you see here, I've opened up the power supply here on my workbench and exposed the insides. And of course, it doesn't look too bad. It's a bit dusty, but look at those beautiful self-exploding reefer capacitors. Yes, there's two of them there, so out they must go. I'll get that done and I'll show you when I'm finished. I didn't bother showing you opening it up. I'm sure you've seen that many, many times. So let's get to it. Well, as you can see, I've replaced the reefer capacitors and put more modern ones in there. I've also cleaned the power supply a bit, and you can see the two reefers here. They practically crumble when you take them out. But anyway, everything looks fine, but I've tried to power it on and the power supply didn't respond. I could see the fan move slightly. So I put some load on it. I've got 3 hard drives, old IDE hard drives, and I also put the 5-volt load on the 5-volt line using a 12-volt light bulb. So I hope it will turn on. Let me try. No, it didn't turn on. It's not consistent. Sometimes it turns on and runs fairly well. Sometimes it simply ignores me. And now it turns on. Everything appears to be fine. We have the 5-volt out. Got the 3 drives giving me +5 and +12-volt loads. So I'm not sure whether this is load related or there's something wrong with the power supply. I've used an oscilloscope to check the voltages. Multimeter to check all the voltages, and they are fairly close to what they should be. But I also put an oscilloscope to check for ripple, and they are minimal. So everything looks normal. So all I can do is try this a few times more, and then I'll just put it all together again, and hopefully it will work. But we shall see. Well, after some experimentation, I've discovered that the power supply needs to be turned on twice in order to start up. Not sure what's causing that. Let me show you. If I turn it on now, it barely moves and there's a bit of a click in a relay. Turn it off, turn it on, and now it runs fine. And it will run for as long as I keep it powered on. I also discovered I need 3 old IDE hard drives to keep it running. If I only have 2, it starts up, but after a few seconds it powers off, probably because of over voltage. But it's possible there's a capacitor somewhere not happy, so I'll have to take it apart and check the capacitors. Well, the power supply is working again, like it should. After I recapped it, replacing just about all the capacitors, it still didn't work. So I suspected there was something else going on. And one of the things I saw, or actually heard, was a click every time I turned it on. And that led me to this relay, which you see here, the blue relay, the red relay. And I took that out, and that's fine. I then took this board out completely, and I was looking at the components on it to understand how it works. And when I measured that 5-watt resistor below it, yep, that had gone open circuit. So that's the culprit. A 4-ohm 5-watt resistor, open circuit. And as you can see, there's a fancy wide new one, and now it works like a charm. So I'll put it together and show you. So here's the power supply, all assembled. These are all the parts I replaced, and that 4-ohm resistor that went open. And now when I power on, all good. I even checked all the voltages, and they're all within specs. So power supply has been fixed. Next, I'll have to take the I/O planar and check the tantalum capacitors, because we don't want any popcorn sounds when we apply power to it. So let me have a look at that, check for any shorts first, and then I'll probably replace some of them. Now, before I tackle the I/O planar, as IBM calls it, with the tantalum, I decided to clean the chassis and the cover, plus clean the boards as well, the I/O planar and the cards I found in the expansion. So first it was a bit of soapy water and then spray it with fresh water. The PCBs, I use a PCB cleaner and an anti-static PCB brush to clean them. And I then subsequently blow them with some air to get that off until it looks pretty clean and all the dust goes off. Now, I think it did come up pretty well, as you can see. I, of course, left the chassis and the cover in the sun to dry, but once dry, pulled it into my eCave, and it looks pretty good after cleaning. I did put some car polish on the chassis because it's painted, but the cards are pretty shiny, so I can't complain about them coming out clean. Now, I also fixed up the hard drive. As you can see, there's no more bend. It was just a simple unbending action with pliers. The cover still has some spots on it, but I'll look into that a bit later, whether I respray it or just fix that rusty spot. So let's tackle the I/O planar board next. Here I have the I/O planar board from the expansion unit, and looking at the tantalums, there are a fair few here. The blue ones here near the slots are decoupling caps. I'm not worried about those. These 4 here are on the 5 volts, and I'm not worried about those. But those 3 here, there are cause for concern because they operate at 12 volts. These 2 here, C2 and 3, are the plus 12 volts, and the C4 is the minus 12 volts. So I think it would be prudent to replace those 3. I'll just leave these and the blue ones because I don't think they're overstressed. They're all rated 16 volts, so 5 volt is far below the tantalum 16 volt capacity. So I'll replace those 3 and then we'll plug it into the power supply and see what happens. All right, I've replaced the 3 tantalum self-exploding popcorn capacitors on the plus 12 volt and the minus 12 volts. And I left the other, and so these are the bodies. I just snip them off and desolder the remaining part of the pins and sucker solder the holes clean. Then I can put new ones in. So that worked out well. Now it's time to power this on and see if any of the others get upset. Let's try that. I'd be surprised if that happened, but you never know. So everything seems to be fine. It's time to start putting things together. Now, I'll probably have to end this video here, and I'll put a sequel to this, and I'll tell you a bit more about what I plan to do before I sign off for now. Well, as I mentioned, this episode is turning into a half-an-hour episode, and I don't want to make it much longer than that, so there will be a follow-up. It's been a bit more of a challenge than I expected, but you never know beforehand with equipment which is almost 40 years old. But anyway, before I can assemble everything back together again and start hooking it up to the 5150, I need to prep the 5150. First of all, I need to verify that the BIOS of the 5150 is the latest revision, which can support a hard drive, because at the end of the day, if it isn't, nothing will work. For that purpose, I've got an XT IDE to a compact flash card, which I'll endeavor to put into the 5150. And get that working first, because if that hard drive actually works, that old one here, I want to copy it and save the data off it. Now, this may turn into 2 more episodes, but let's see where things take us with these first steps. So until the next episode, thanks for stepping into the eCave.